I can help you walk again, in exchange for the food you throw away every day. The marble-floored lobby froze in time. Micah Brooks, 13, sun-darkened skin, unflinching black eyes, one hand gripping the frayed strap of his backpack. He stood there, on the 60th floor of Elysium Heights, a floating world where the ultra-wealthy looked down at life through eyes gilded in gold and armored in glass. In front of him sat Evelyn Lancaster, pharmaceutical CEO, the most powerful woman on the East Coast. She was perched in a $2 million high-tech wheelchair, spine stiff, platinum hair flawless, gaze sharp enough to carve ice. She laughed. Not the kind that warms a room, but the kind that only those used to crushing others know how to produce. You really think some back alley voodoo from black kids in abandoned churches can fix what Harvard doctors gave up on? The words sliced like a scalpel across the face of truth. What she didn't know was that the boy in front of her wasn't just raised on his grandma's leftover dinner. He was raised on the memory of a mother who died outside a hospital door because she didn't have insurance, and a hospital named after Evelyn. Micah didn't flinch. He stood still, eyes locked on her legs. The same legs he once saw twitch reflected in a mirror on a night she thought no one was watching. He didn't speak again. He had already planted the seed. And Evelyn didn't know that in the very moment she mocked, dismissed, and belittled, she just stepped into a game. A game she didn't write the rules for. A game where truth needs no permission. A black boy had just knocked on the gates of privilege. And this time he wasn't here to beg. He came to awaken. Micah's room had no windows. Only a flickering neon light, damp-stained walls, and the metallic groan of pipes long past their expiration date. The basement of an abandoned church. Once a place for confession, now the shelter where he and his grandmother survived. No bed, no stove. Just an old mattress laid next to a chipped statue of the Virgin Mary, missing one hand. Naomi Brooks, 73, blind in one eye after a botched vaccination. But she never complained. She had once been a midwife, delivered hundreds of babies with hands that trembled from pressure, but stayed steady like stone from faith. Now she taught Micah how to read a pulse from a wrist, how to listen to a breath and tell if the lungs were filling with fluid. Real medicine doesn't live in labs. It lives where your hands go, right where it hurts the most. But the deepest pain was the one Micah still carried. His mother, a community nurse, died on the steps of St. Evelyn's Hospital. Not from an accident, but from the system. She was denied emergency care for lack of a valid insurance ID. A policy written by Evelyn's own pharmaceutical empire, cutting funds from public clinics to pump billions into elite research programs. The next day, Evelyn appeared on national television. Hair flawless, voice icy, and delivered a line that rocked the country. Healthcare is for those who work for it, not for those who expect it free. Micah was 10 when he heard that. He didn't understand everything, but he knew one thing with crystal clarity. His mom worked, even when she died. From that day forward, he stopped crying. He just watched. He remembered. And he waited for the day the heart of that system would be forced to look in the mirror. No one noticed the boy who often sat on the rooftop across from Elysium Heights. They thought Micah was playing with his phone. But in his hands was a notebook covered in dense pencil scribbles, timestamps, reflexes, expressions, repetitive habits. Evelyn Lancaster thought were well hidden behind bulletproof glass and high-end security systems. Micah didn't see with his eyes. He saw with pain, and with the memory of someone who had once cared for the dying. One stormy night, when lightning struck nearby, he saw Evelyn's left leg twitch, just for a split second. Another afternoon, when she screamed at her housekeeper for missing a doctor's appointment, her right toes curled with the rhythm of her ragged breathing. That wasn't a vegetative response. It was a living body. And it was afraid. Micah quietly wrote in his notebook, reacts to loud sound, slight muscle contraction during emotional spikes. That night, he laid the notebook down on the rickety wooden table in the basement. Naomi read every line with her hands. She didn't need sight to see, only a heart that had never forgotten a thing. She's not paralyzed, baby. Micah looked up. He had suspected it. But now it was confirmed. Naomi breathed slow. Her calloused hands rested over his chest. It's psychological paralysis. It's not that her body doesn't want to walk. It's that her mind doesn't dare to stand up. She's not trapped in that chair. She's trapped in her own guilt. The air went still, like water right before it shatters. Micah looked down at his hands. He knew, from this moment on, he wasn't just carrying notes. He was carrying the burden of freeing a soul that had locked itself inside a lie. Evelyn Lancaster didn't stay silent for long. She never let anyone question her power, especially not a black kid from an abandoned church. Just 3 days after that strange encounter in the lobby, Micah was called to the principal's office. Mr. Patterson, the same man who once shook Micah's hand at the scholarship award ceremony, wasn't smiling today. Micah, we got a call from Mrs. Lancaster. She's accusing you of trespassing, harassment, and unlawful entry into a private residential complex. Micah froze. He didn't argue because he knew, he knew no one would listen. He simply looked down at the desk where the school's logo sat, proudly sponsored by the Lancaster Foundation. That afternoon, a post went viral online. Black teen hacks security camera, blackmails disabled female CEO. Attached was a photo of Micah standing in front of Elysium Heights, screenshot from a surveillance camera. No context. No sound. The class said nothing. But he heard every whisper behind his back. That's the scholarship slave, isn't it? Dude only pretends to be smart so people feel bad for him. His mom died because she didn't have insurance. And now he thinks he can go after Lancaster? The old wound split open. The phrase scholarship slave, he'd heard it during his first year. When the teacher asked for class presentations, and he was the only one chosen. Not because he was good, but because they needed to diversify the lineup. Micah thought he'd moved past it. But now, every word from back then came back like knives, sharpened. That night, a police officer knocked on the basement door. No arrest warrant. Just an official eviction notice for unauthorized occupation of religious property. Naomi didn't ask many questions. She simply poured some tea gently and said, "When the rich fear the poor, it's because they know they've done wrong. And their biggest fear is that the truth ends up in the hands of the people they look down on." Micah nodded. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel scared. He felt they were. Micah was no longer the boy on the sidelines. He began investigating, not with technology, but with memory, libraries, and patience. In the school library, where people had forgotten newspapers still existed, he traced old interviews, faded press releases, and news bulletins that had long been taken down. Piece by piece, the true portrait of Evelyn Lancaster began to emerge. She wasn't born into wealth. Real name, Evelyn Korczynski, daughter of a Polish immigrant family, raised in a manufacturing town in the Rust Belt. She met Harrison Lancaster, sole heir to the Lancaster medical empire, during a psychiatric treatment program. She was an inpatient, diagnosed with anxiety disorders, self-harming tendencies. They married just 6 months later. Then 7 years down the line, Harrison filed for divorce. The next day, the elevator in their home malfunctioned. Evelyn was found unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. No spinal fracture. No brain injury. But from that day forward, she used a wheelchair. A week later, Harrison revised his will. And 9 days after that, he died suddenly of a stroke. Micah read that line, and his heartbeat slowed. Not from shock, but because it aligned perfectly with everything Naomi had ever described. That night, Naomi reached under the bed and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle, layers of worn silk. A notebook, handwritten, passed down from their ancestors. This is knowledge from 4 generations. My mother's mother's mother once treated a noble woman with the exact same symptoms as Evelyn: muscle contractions in the legs, insomnia, panic attacks, and selective numbness. Naomi flipped to a page and pointed at a faded line of text. It's not that the body cannot walk. It's that the soul refuses to move forward. Micah fell silent. In that underground room, once a place of confession, he was now holding the secret that could bring down an entire empire of privilege. And this time, she would have nowhere to hide. Micah believed he was close. So close he could almost touch the truth. He had data. He had copies of medical records. He had video footage showing Evelyn's muscular reflexes. And most importantly, he had the quiet support of Dr. Keller, a former student of his mother's in the community health program. "Keep going, Micah," Dr. Keller once told him. "The truth needs to be spoken, no matter where it comes from." But Evelyn didn't live by truth. She lived by the fear of others. And money. A lot of money. 3 days later, Keller stopped answering his phone. On the fourth day, a video went viral on social media. Dr. Keller denies involvement in scheme to smear disabled CEO. His face was pale. His voice flat. His eyes never once looked at the camera. Micah knew he'd been bought, or threatened, or both. He hadn't even had time to react when the blow landed. At 7 a.m. the next morning, 2 police officers and a city security official arrived at the abandoned church. They had a search warrant under the pretense of investigating unauthorized access to private data and distribution of false information. They seized Micah's computer, his phone, his hard drives, his notebook. Even the audio recordings of Evelyn's voice were confiscated on the grounds of illegally obtained evidence. Naomi tried to remain calm, but her cloudy eyes trembled when a representative from the Department of Health pulled out a psychiatric evaluation request. Naomi Brooks is being accused of spreading unverified medical information, displaying signs of superstitious behavior recommended for cognitive assessment. Micah stood frozen, petrified. Everything he had built, what he thought was a blade of justice, was snapped in half within hours. That night, the basement was so quiet you could hear the faint hum of wires against damp walls. Naomi sat on a wooden chair, her trembling hands gripping a cold teapot. Micah knelt before her, arms wrapped tightly around her knees like a child. His voice was raw. "I thought I could win, but it feels like I just lost everything." Naomi didn't speak. She simply placed a hand on his head and whispered, "Not yet, baby. What's real can't stay buried. It just needs someone hurting enough to keep it alive." That night, when the city had gone silent, Naomi opened the old wooden box hidden beneath the chipped statue of St. Joseph. There was nothing valuable inside. Just a small, yellowed piece of paper, handwritten in fading ink. But to Micah, it was the only thing that still kept his mother close. If you see someone in pain, look them in the eyes. Not to pity them, but to remember you've been there too. His mother had written it 1 week before she died. No explanation. No sorrow. Just a truth that only someone who had lived and suffered would dare leave behind. Micah folded the paper and tucked it into his wallet. His eyes lit up like a new fire had sparked in the dark. He had nothing left in his hands, but he still had memory. And he still had the back door into Elysium Heights camera system, the same one he once hacked into, just to stream music from the penthouse sound system. But this time, he wasn't searching for music. He was searching for the truth. 3 nights. No sleep. No food. Only the click of keys, the glow of the screen, and video footage playing in slow motion. And finally, he found it. Evelyn Lancaster. 3 a.m. She stood up from her wheelchair. No shaking. No struggle. She walked across the living room, adjusted the sofa, picked up a TV remote from the floor, drank water, then calmly practiced light yoga on a luxury mat. A secondary camera angle caught her standing in front of the mirror, fixing her hair, smiling softly, and then looking straight into the lens of a camera without the red recording light. In another clip, her voice came through, clear, raw, unfiltered. If I lose this chair, I lose the throne. She wasn't just faking paralysis. She had made herself the face of disability, to hold power, to harvest pity, and to control the media narrative. Micah sat frozen in front of the screen. No rage, no shock. Just the silence of someone who had finally seen the ghost hiding inside. A woman once celebrated as the perfect victim, and now he knew exactly what he had to do. Sunday morning, 60th floor. The penthouse was cold, like an empty temple. Micah wore a white button-up shirt, laptop clutched in his arms. Naomi had on her earth-toned cardigan. Patricia Monroe, a community health physician, walked beside them, eyes sharp as a scalpel. Evelyn Lancaster wasn't surprised when she opened the door. She thought she'd won. Thought she had extinguished the fire that rose from the basement. Crushed the small boy who dared to point a finger at the throne. I've already called security, she said coolly, eyes fixed only on Micah. He didn't answer. He simply placed the laptop on the table and opened a video file. The screen lit up. Evelyn Lancaster, 3 a.m. Standing. Walking. Stretching in the gym. Wiping tears from her face in front of a mirror. Undeniable. Unspinnable. Unmistakable. One more clip, and the audio played. If I lose this chair, I lose the throne. The room froze. Evelyn turned pale. But Micah wasn't done. This is Dr. Monroe. Unlike the ones you've paid off, she has real credentials. And a blood test taken from you 3 months ago. Monroe stepped forward and pulled out a file. Lab results. Traces of digitalis in Harrison Lancaster's bloodstream. An extract from foxglove flowers, a naturally occurring toxin. The exact dosage used to simulate a stroke. Evelyn's hands trembled. Micah looked her straight in the eyes. No hatred. Only truth. You sit in a chair built on the blood of someone who once believed in you. And you shut down the only drug that could have saved my mother just because it wasn't profitable enough. Naomi stood, holding up a phone, already live streaming. Mrs. Evelyn Lancaster, would you like the entire country to see if your legs still work? Evelyn resisted. But her body, her own reflexes, stood up when Micah slammed his hand down on the table. The camera captured it all. The disabled CEO standing in the middle of the room. No cane. No assistance. Not paralyzed. The image spread across America in just 6 minutes. No one looked at Evelyn with pity anymore. Because now, they saw themselves and how she had fooled them all. 3 weeks after that historic morning, Evelyn Lancaster was officially indicted on 4 charges. First-degree murder, large-scale medical fraud, and corporate tax evasion, falsifying medical records, abusing insurance funds, and manipulating diagnostic standards. She was escorted out of Elysium Heights in a real wheelchair. This time, no pretending. There were no cheers. No tears from employees. Only slow-moving camera lenses following the rhythm of her wheels. Capturing the moment of pharmaceutical, Queen was rolled away from the empire she built on lies and the blood of the invisible. The penthouse on the 60th floor, where million-dollar abstract paintings once hung, now held a portrait of a silver-haired woman, blind in one eye, teaching students how to take a pulse with bare hands. The Naomi Brooks Center for Community Medicine was founded with the very assets seized from Evelyn, a full-circle restoration of justice. Naomi didn't need titles. Only one thing, that every child could learn how to heal without waiting on Harvard. Micah was offered honorary scholarships by 12 top universities, from Harvard to Stanford. He chose the one with the strongest community medicine program. At his first press conference, a reporter asked, "How does it feel to have cured Evelyn Lancaster, the most powerful woman in American healthcare?" Micah paused for a few seconds, then said just one sentence, "I didn't heal her legs. I just helped her out of the prison she built for herself, not with medicine, not with revenge, but with a mirror, so she'd have no choice but to look back at herself. Then Micah stepped off the stage. No exclusives, no movie deals, no podcast launch. He returned to the old basement, now the archive room of the center, because he knew there were still so many people no one had ever truly seen, and he would be the first to look. In a federal prison on the outskirts of the city, Evelyn Lancaster sat alone in a 2-meter cell. No more cameras, no hidden microphones, no one left to perform for. For the first time, she truly couldn't stand up. Not because she was paralyzed, but because of what had collapsed inside her. A mind slowly corroded by guilt, power, and isolation. Severe depression had begun to waste her muscles. Every time she looked at her hands, the same hands she once used to push that fake wheelchair, she saw that moment again, Micah staring straight into her eyes. Unafraid. And she understood, being exposed by the world wasn't what hurt most. It was the moment she saw herself and could no longer look away. Meanwhile, Naomi Brooks, her one clouded eye steady, was teaching the first class of students at the community health center that now bore her name. On the whiteboard, a diagram of human anatomy. Beneath it, a black and white photo of a black woman massaging the legs of a laboring mother, her mother's mother's mother. Medicine isn't pills, medicine is understanding. It's knowing when to put the stethoscope down and hold a patient's hand instead. The students, of every color and background, scribbled quietly, focused. And Micah? He wasn't just an honors student. He was a symbol. A boy who once asked for scraps had forced a nation to confront some of its most uncomfortable questions. Who really holds wisdom? Is healing only for those who can afford it? And who is truly paralyzed, the body or the conscience? They called him the boy who made her walk, but he always stepped away from the spotlight. I only did one thing, he would say. I didn't give up. Because truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be held. And when this country finally looked back, they no longer saw a black boy begging for leftovers. They saw something bigger. No one is beneath dignity, as long as they still carry compassion and the courage to look directly into someone else's pain.